All right, settle in, everyone, and turn the lights down low. Welcome back to Gloomwood Radio. I'm your host, Dawson, and tonight we have a story that proves that even 30,000 feet in the air, you are never truly alone. It's a chilling tale that makes you question who or what is sitting in the seat next to you. This one comes to us from a listener all the way over in Thailand, a place rich with history, culture, and stories of the supernatural that can make your blood run cold. Now, the beliefs there might be a little different from what you're used to, so I ask you to listen with an open mind. Think of it as a terrifying piece of folklore brought to life. And hey, if you enjoy these late-night journeys into the dark, show some love. Make sure you hit that like button, share it with a friend who needs a good scare, and of course, subscribe for more. And for those of you who are extra supportive, that super thanks button is always appreciated. Now, let's begin. The Final Flight. This story comes to a gentleman named Anand. About 5 years ago, Anand worked as a flight attendant for a domestic airline in Thailand. At the time, there was a particular province in the northeastern part of the country that had become incredibly popular for something the locals call moo. For those who don't know, moo is a general term for making a spiritual pilgrimage. It could mean visiting a sacred temple, seeing a famous monk, or consulting a spirit medium to ask for good fortune, blessings, or protection. This province was a hot spot, so airlines were running flights back and forth constantly. Anand and his crew had been flying this route all day, from morning till night. Back and forth, back and forth. They were exhausted. This was their final flight of the day, heading from that province back to Bangkok. As they prepared the cabin, the crew chatted about how tired they were, looking forward to getting home and enjoying their day off tomorrow. The ground staff informed Anand that this would be a light load, meaning the flight was far from full. There were plenty of empty seats. The crew was relieved. An easy flight home, no fuss. They began boarding the passengers. It was all routine, with Anand greeting everyone at the door with a smile. The stream of people eventually trickled to a stop. Just as they were about to close up, Anand saw him. A large, heavy-set man was rushing toward the gate, clearly the last passenger responding to a final call. Anand stood at the door, ready with his standard greeting. "Good evening, sir. Welcome aboard. May I see your boarding pass?" The man handed him the pass, but what came with it was a smell. Anand described it as a putrid, sickeningly sweet stench of decay, so overwhelming it almost made him gag. He wasn't sure if it came from the man himself or was just a gust of wind that happened to hit him at that exact moment, but it arrived with this passenger. Anand directed the man to his seat, 3A, a window seat on the left side of the plane, just a few rows from the front. The two seats next to him, 3B and 3C, were empty. Once everyone was supposedly on board, it was time for the official head count. This is standard procedure. Anand walked down the aisle with his little clicker counter. He counted once. The number was off. It showed 6 more passengers than the manifest listed. "That's strange," he thought. "I must be tired." So he went back to the front and started over, clicking carefully for each person. Again, the same result. 6 extra souls on board. He went to his supervisor, a senior flight attendant named Pim. "Pim," he said, "I think I'm losing it. I've counted twice, and both times I'm over by 6. Pim, ever the professional, said, "Don't worry, I'll help." They walked the aisle together, Pim in front, counting, and Anand behind her, counting along with his own clicker. Here's where it gets strange. Anand saw people sitting in certain seats. He clicked his counter for them, but he noticed Pim walked right past those same seats without counting anyone. When they reached the back, Pim's count was perfect, matching the manifest exactly. Anand's was, once again, over by 6. He was baffled, but chalked it up to sheer exhaustion. Maybe he was seeing things. He gave the all clear. The cabin door was sealed, and the jet bridge pulled away.
As the plane began to taxi, it was time for the safety demonstration. Anand stood at the front of his section. As he was demonstrating how to use the life vest, his eyes scanned the cabin. His gaze fell on row 3. The man in 3A was sitting there quietly, but in the aisle seat, 3C, there was now a woman. She was skeletal, an old woman with papery skin stretched tight over her bones and a shock of thin, white hair. But her presence wasn't the strangest part. It was how she was sitting. She was kneeling on the seat, facing the backrest, with her forehead pressed against the upholstery. Her back was to the aisle. Anand was taken aback. That was not only strange, but also unsafe. He made a mental note. As soon as the demonstration was over, he would go and tell her to sit properly. He finished his part, put the equipment away, and glanced at the seating chart to confirm seat 3C was supposed to be empty. It was. He looked up again at the seat. She was gone. A cold knot formed in his stomach. He couldn't react. The eyes of all the passengers were on him. Any sign of panic from the crew could cause chaos. He had to keep his composure. He took a deep breath and continued his duties. Later, as other crew members walked past that row, they all commented on that same foul smell lingering heavily around that one specific seat. The plane reached the runway, and, as is standard for takeoff at night, the cabin lights were dimmed to darkness. Anand was strapped into his jump seat at the front of the cabin. He glanced one more time towards row 3. She was back, in the exact same position, kneeling on the seat, facing away from him. This time, Anand was about to unbuckle himself and intervene, procedure be damned. But just as he moved, the woman's head began to turn. Slowly, creakily. It turned all the way around, a full 180 degrees, to face him while her body remained motionless. Anand froze. Her face, it was a nightmare. She had no eyelids, only stark white orbs for eyes. And she smiled. It was a grotesque, unnaturally wide grin that stretched to her ears, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth like a shark's. Then she started making a sound, a rhythmic, chattering noise. She was grinding her teeth together, a sharp, wet, clicking sound that cut through the low hum of the engines. Kick, 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 right at him. He was paralyzed with fear. He tried to turn to his supervisor, Pim, who was seated beside him. He opened his mouth to say something, anything, but before a sound could escape, Pim, looking straight ahead, whispered firmly, Don't speak. She knew. She saw it too. They had been trained for emergencies, but nothing like this. Following some unspoken rule, both Anand and Pim closed their eyes tightly. As the plane accelerated down the runway and lifted into the air, that horrifying clicking sound didn't stop. It seemed to move, circling around them in the darkness of the cabin, a disembodied chatter of teeth right next to their ears. Then, the fastened seatbelt sign pinged off. Pim immediately flicked on the cabin lights. Everything was normal. The seat at 3C was empty. The smell was gone. The presence had vanished. The rest of the flight was tense but uneventful. When the plane finally landed in Bangkok and taxied to the gate, Anand prepared to open the door. The rule is that passengers must remain seated until the door is open. But the second he unlocked it, he was startled to find the heavy-set man from 3A standing right behind him, having somehow moved from his seat to the front without anyone noticing. "Excuse me," he mumbled and rushed out of the plane. Anand noticed something odd. The terrible smell that had clung to the man was completely gone.
With the flight finally over, the crew breathed a collective sigh of relief. As they were gathering their things, a call came through from the ground staff. A passenger has reported a lost item. Anand asked for the seat number. The voice on the other end replied, "Row 3, window seat, on the left." Seat 3A. A wave of dread washed over the crew. No one wanted to go back in there. But it was their duty. They decided to go as a group for safety. Anand went on to the plane, while two other flight attendants waited nervously at the doorway. The cabin was now brightly lit, with engineers and cleaners on board, which offered some comfort. Anand went to the seat and searched everywhere. He checked the floor, the seat back pocket, under the cushions. Finally, inside the magazine slot, his fingers brushed against something hard. He pulled it out. It was a small, ornate wooden object, about 3 inches tall, shaped like the kun, or the king piece in Thai chess. It looked like a tiny, sealed urn or locket. The moment he held it, that same overwhelming putrid smell exploded into the air, stronger than ever. It was so bad that one of the engineers nearby cried out, "Whoa, what is that smell?" and had to leave the plane for fresh air. Anand, feeling nauseous, knew he had to get this thing off the plane. He found 3 biohazard-grade Ziploc bags and sealed the object inside, one bag over the other. Even through 3 layers, the stench was noticeable. He handed the package to the ground staff member, who recoiled instinctively at the smell. Later, the whole crew sat down together. Anand recounted the horrifying details of the woman's face. Pim confirmed she had seen the kneeling figure as well, but hadn't seen the face turn. She said she knew from experience that when you see something that shouldn't be there, the best thing to do is to not acknowledge it. Pim then added another disturbing detail. At one point during the flight, the man from 3A had gone to the restroom. As he passed Pim, he'd muttered, "Do not disturb me." From inside the locked bathroom, the crew heard loud, gut-wrenching, retching sounds, as if he were trying to violently expel something from his body. The final piece of the puzzle came a few minutes later when the ground staff called back, their voice shaking. They had found the male passenger and presented him with the bagged object. The man's face went pale with terror. He started screaming that it wasn't his, that he had never seen it before. And then he turned and ran, disappearing into the airport crowd, abandoning the object for good.
That's when they all understood. He hadn't forgotten the item. He had intentionally left it on the plane. He was trying to get rid of it, to leave whatever entity was attached to it behind. But because of Anand's diligence, his plan failed. The ground staff, not knowing what to do and too scared to keep it, took the cursed object to a nearby temple to be blessed and left in the care of the monks. But the part that haunts Anand to this day is replaying his own words in his head. As that last passenger boarded, burdened by a dark secret, Anand had smiled and said the same thing he said to everyone. "Welcome aboard. Please, come in." He can't help but wonder if that simple, polite invitation was all the permission it needed to step onto the plane. So, what do we make of that? It's a terrifying thought, isn't it? This poor flight crew was caught in the middle of someone else's spiritual battle. The man from 3A wasn't just a passenger. He was a desperate man trying to unload a curse onto a random group of strangers, a plane full of them, sealed in a metal tube in the sky. This is a classic example of why, in many cultures, there are stark warnings against picking up or accepting strange old objects. You never know what's attached to them. That man was selfish and incredibly reckless, putting everyone on that flight in potential danger just to save himself. Anand and his crew did everything right, but in doing their job, they almost became entangled in something much darker. It just goes to show you, sometimes the most dangerous baggage isn't the one in the overhead bin. That's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you for tuning in to Gloomwood Radio. If you have a story you're brave enough to share, you know where to find me. And if you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe. Every little bit helps keep these stories alive. And a special shout out to everyone who uses that super thanks button. Until next time, stay safe and be careful who or what you invite in. Good night.